Though, here we go again. Meghan Markle just couldn't help herself. Another story, another headline, another swirl of disbelief. It begins the same way it always does. A claim so improbable it bends reality, wrapped in a glossy layer of self-mythology and presented with the confidence of someone who believes the world will never look too closely. This time, she's out here declaring that she gained 65 pounds during her pregnancy. And yet, miraculously, it all landed solely in her belly. Not her face, not her arms, not even her ankles. Just a perfect orb suspended on designer heels, as if gravity itself had agreed to participate in the illusion. The story would almost be amusing if it weren't told with such conviction. She describes herself strutting in 5-inch stilettos deep into the third trimester, posing, glowing, graceful, a vision of effortless maternity. But for those who've witnessed real pregnancies, who understand the exhaustion, the swelling, the tender weight of reality, something feels off. Every detail of the tale sounds polished for performance. It's the kind of story that sounds right only until you stop and think about how the human body actually works. The image she sells is cinematic. Meghan, once petite and light, suddenly carrying 65 pounds more yet somehow untouched everywhere else. Her face remains camera-ready, her frame unaltered. The only visible change, she insists, was that picture-perfect bump, round and high and self-contained. People gasped, she says. They marveled. "How are you not tipping forward?" they'd ask. She remembers it as flattery. But to anyone listening now, it sounds more like a warning bell. A clue that the physics of the story don't quite add up. And then, as if scripted for contrast, enters the doctor. A real one, not a tabloid commentator, not an influencer with a medical podcast, but a practicing obstetrician-gynecologist with decades of experience. He speaks with the quiet certainty of someone who has delivered thousands of babies. And his verdict is simple: impossible. Not improbable, not unusual, biologically impossible. A woman gaining that much weight would never have it all concentrated in one area. The body simply doesn't operate that way. Pregnancy redistributes everything. Blood volume increases. Breasts swell. Feet widen. The skin itself prepares to sustain new life. Every part of the body participates in the transformation. He breaks it down clinically. The baby, on average, 7.5 pounds. The placenta, 1.5. The uterus, perhaps 2. Amniotic fluid, another 2. Breasts, another 2. Extra blood, 4. Retained fluids, 4 more. Maternal fat stores, 7 or 8 pounds. All combined, around 30 to 35 pounds, perhaps 40 in some cases. That's what biology supports. But 65? And all supposedly confined to one sculpted belly? It's fantasy. It should have ended there. But of course, it didn't. Because when Meghan Markle tells a story, it's never simply about the event. It's about the image. The myth must be nourished, and the truth, if inconvenient, must be blurred. What began as an anecdote quickly transformed into another piece of the Markle mythology. A legend of extraordinary womanhood meant to separate her from the ordinary. But reality has a way of catching up. Doctors began to weigh in. Mothers, too. Women who had lived through the fatigue and swelling, who had felt their bodies morph in ways they never anticipated. They listened, and they knew. They recognized that kind of claim not as empowerment, but as performance. Because real pregnancy is not glamorous. It humbles. It reshapes. It does not spare you for the sake of photographs. Still, Meghan pressed the tale further. She filled interviews and podcasts with recollections of how she could barely walk, how Harry had to support her, how the strain had tested her endurance. She spoke of resilience, of transformation, of female power. But behind the storytelling, a quiet chorus of skepticism grew. Real mothers were calling it out, not out of spite, but from experience. They'd lived through what she described, and what she described simply didn't happen. The scrutiny didn't stop there. Because when one detail doesn't fit, people begin to examine the rest. And soon, eyes turn towards something far more delicate: the official records. In the United Kingdom, royal births have always been carefully documented. Certificates are public record, the attending physicians proudly listed, the process transparent. But with Meghan, the trail turned murky. For her daughter Lilibet, no certificate directly released by Meghan ever surfaced. What existed came indirectly through the press, a single copy that appeared without clear provenance. No formal presentation, no official statement, no doctor proudly stepping forward to confirm their role. It was as though the most basic piece of documentation had been treated as a state secret. Even Archie's record had been amended mysteriously after the fact. The phrase "Her Royal Highness" appeared, disappeared, and then re-emerged, each alteration accompanied by a new explanation. Publicly, Meghan framed it as a matter of privacy. Her defenders echoed that sentiment. But the pattern of selective secrecy raised questions that privacy alone couldn't explain. If she was proud of her motherhood, why conceal the simplest proof of it? Why should the press, the very entity she so often condemns, be the source of the only accessible records? Transparency had been replaced by curation, and then came that podcast moment. An offhand remark that seemed harmless to casual listeners but dripped with subtext for anyone paying attention. Meghan commented that one needn't tell anyone the name of their child before birth. It was presented as wisdom, a gentle assertion of independence. Yet those who knew the royal protocols recalled that she had, in fact, told the Queen. The statement, however subtle, functioned as a revision, a quiet rewriting of events to fit her preferred narrative of rebellion. She wants to be seen as the outsider who defied tradition, yet she clings to the benefits that same tradition affords. The royal titles remain attached to her children's names, binding them to the very institution she claims to reject. She decries colonial structures, yet insists on her children's entitlement to princely status. It's a contradiction that reveals more than it conceals. Around her, the circle tightens. Familiar faces appear. Figures like Chrissy Teigen, whose own history of online cruelty is well documented, now positioned beside Meghan as a creative ally. The contrast is jarring. The woman who sells herself as a compassionate mentor surrounds herself with those whose legacies are defined by controversy. Every alliance, every photograph feels like another calculated piece in the puzzle. Her newest reinvention is as a female founder, a visionary entrepreneur supposedly backed by Netflix. She frames it as a triumph of self-made power, the natural evolution of her journey. But when viewers visited her brand's website, Netflix's name was nowhere to be found. No logos, no mention, nothing to substantiate the partnership she alluded to. Insiders whispered that the company's involvement had been minimal, a quiet gesture to fulfill a contractual obligation rather than genuine endorsement. If true, it contradicts the entire story she's been telling the world about empowerment and enterprise. At the center of it all lies the same contradiction that's haunted her public life from the beginning. She preaches transparency while withholding details. She claims authenticity while constructing narratives. She celebrates motherhood while her children remain conspicuously absent. The imagery of family life, of maternal warmth, exists largely in anecdotes and staged portraits rather than the organic moments the public recognizes from other royals. There is a strange quiet around those children. Not the protective silence of privacy, but something more curated, more controlled. Public appearances without them. Carefully chosen photographs released months late. The contrast between her vocal devotion to motherhood and the absence of spontaneous maternal presence feels uncanny. For a woman who built her fame on visibility, her children's invisibility has become one of the story's most persistent mysteries. And then there is the doctor, the one who supposedly delivered Lilibet. In most royal births, physicians step into history with pride, their names recorded, their participation documented. Yet this doctor's presence flickered briefly and then vanished. No interviews, no statements, no acknowledgement. A ghost in the official record. The silence around that single name echoes louder than any statement could. Comparisons have begun to form. Not cruelly, but inevitably. When Jennifer Lopez carried twins, she gained 50 pounds and it was visible in every feature. When Kim Kardashian faced complications and preeclampsia, she shared her swelling, her discomfort, her vulnerability. Their transformations were public, human, unfiltered. But Meghan's version of pregnancy seems to exist in a vacuum of perfection. The the kind that belongs not to life, but to marketing. Even the imagery surrounding her pregnancy raised questions. Reports emerged of Prince Harry's insistence that she never be photographed without a coat. Getty photographers recalled being restricted from capturing her belly directly. In one sequence of images, taken just hours apart, the size and shape of that belly appeared dramatically different. Lighting, angles, wardrobe, explanations abound. Yet the inconsistencies linger, fueling speculation that has never quite been extinguished. To observers, it begins to look like an elaborate stage, an act of constant self-curation. Meghan, once a working actress, seems unable to step out of character. Every story, every photo, every interview feels choreographed, as though authenticity itself must be managed like a brand. But brands are fragile things. The moment cracks appear, the illusion begins to unravel. And that's precisely what's happening. Each retelling exposes another inconsistency. Each attempt to reassert control invites new scrutiny. What was once taken at face value is now examined frame by frame. The same audience that once sympathized now hesitates. Because when stories shift, when facts blur, when even biology is rewritten for effect, people begin to wonder what, if anything, is real. The question is no longer about pregnancy or titles or even motherhood. It's about credibility. It's about the limits of reinvention. How long can someone sustain a performance before the mask becomes transparent? Meghan Markle has built an empire out of narrative control, out of the belief that storytelling itself is power. But power without truth eventually collapses under its own weight. Behind the glamour and the polished interviews lies a deeper truth. A need to dominate the narrative so completely that reality becomes secondary. It's not malice, it's compulsion. A need to ensure that every version of her story reflects her chosen identity. The misunderstood, the wronged, the survivor. But the more she crafts, the less it convinces. Authenticity can't be manufactured. And so the illusion phrase. The woman who once captivated the world with a fairy tale wedding now finds herself trapped in a story she can no longer fully control. The pregnancy that was meant to humanize her has become a riddle. The motherhood that was meant to anchor her image now fuels speculation. The empire of empathy she sought to build is shadowed by doubt. The tragedy, perhaps, is not that people question her, but that she seems to have lost sight of where performance ends and truth begins. Each interview, each anecdote feels rehearsed, perfected, polished. The spontaneity that once made her relatable has vanished, replaced by the sterile language of brand management. Even her silence feels scripted now, carefully timed between revelations. Public life demands consistency. When someone repeatedly reshapes their own narrative, that consistency disappears, and with it, trust. Meghan may still have supporters, loyal, vocal, unwavering, but even among them, a subtle unease has begun to surface. They see the pattern, even if they refuse to name it. They sense that something beneath the surface doesn't align. The omniscient observer sees the full picture. The rise, the reinvention, the revision. It's a portrait of ambition entangled with insecurity, of a woman determined to define herself, yet constantly rewriting the definitions. The contradictions are endless. Privacy, yet perpetual exposure. Rebellion, yet reliance on tradition. Authenticity, yet artifice. And somewhere in the midst of it all, the truth waits. Quiet, buried beneath layers of narrative. Whether it ever emerges depends on whether she can stop performing long enough to let it breathe. Because at some point, the world stops listening to stories and starts looking for proof. When that day comes, the question won't be who Meghan Markle says she is. It will be who she truly was when the cameras stopped rolling, when the microphones were switched off, when the performance finally gave way to silence. This is Crown and Controversy, unraveling the royals, one scandal at a time. Don't forget to subscribe.